In the midst of this back and forth battle, where even one wrong move could have spelt defeat, Ningirsu noticed the chance and gave a signal to Lee. It was the start of a solo operation that Lee had proposed. Page 5. The operation proposed by Lee. Ib was relieved to see Lee, who managed to sneak into the ancient ruins by herself and reach where Ib was being held. But then Ib asked Lee about the truth of the mekk-knights and who they really were. Maybe we shouldn't be fighting against the mekk-knights. Lee slowly looked back at Ib when she said that. Then she flashed a sadistic smile, dropping the adorable facade she had kept since they had first met, and took on a much more terrifying visage. Lee revealed her true colors as she mentally took control of the body of Ib, causing the two of them to be reborn as Ibli. The mekk-knights were aware that Lee had disappeared, but could not afford to deal with her due to her being stuck in the midst of battle. The power of Ibli, and the heir to the power of the staff. The battle between the mekk-knights, who viewed Ningirsu as the strongest threat, and Aurum, who kept growing stronger, continued. But then a massive explosion occurred inside the ruins. A torrent of incredible power erupted from the world chalice, greater than any seen before. And then, in the next moment, she suddenly appeared. It was none other than Ib, but the power that emanated from her, brimming with evil, was a telltale sign that she was no longer Ib. She smiled and told them that she was Lee, and that this body now belonged to her. As well, Ibli released a wave of energy, forcibly cancelling out the power of the world chalice she had granted to Aurum and the others. And then she tried to take their lives as well. However, in a twist of fate, the mekk-knights chose to oppose her. The united form of the mekk-knights was undone as they found they could no longer endure the power of Ibli. Ibli extracted the cores from most of the mekk-knights by force and tried to seize the sacred staff sealed inside the core of Blue Sky. As the mekk-knights knew, the sacred staff was actually the key that controlled the fate of the stars and the very planet itself, Blue Sky attempted to make Aurum his heir in his darkest hour. Aurum opened his heart to the mekk-knight and inherited the power of the staff. Now in his hands, the key transformed into a pair of swords. Page 6. The rematch against Ibli. Even though he inherited the key, the power of Aurum became a pair of swords, because it was an indirect succession granted to him by Mekk-knight Blue Sky, rather than the one true heir Ib. When Ibli realized that Ib, sleeping deep within her, had the right of succession, she rushed to activate the World Lance before Aurum, who now could use the power of the key. While Aurum managed to tail her, he found himself struggling against the nightmares, mythical beasts created by Ibli. However, Ningirsu, aided by Imduk, managed to catch up with Aurum and the monsters. Together they struggled to help Aurum, as they had lost the power of the World Chalice in their previous fight, as everyone rushed towards the World Lance. But in the blink of an eye, Ibli managed to activate the World Lance first, launching a terrifying and intense attack against the heroes. The mythical beasts, born by Ibli's hands, the nightmares. Ibli used the cores of the mekk-knights to create beasts from myth and legend, each inheriting the characteristics of its source mekk-knight. Ningirsu rushed to the side of Aurum as his friend struggled to hold them off, and managed to defeat Mermaid in a single deadly blow. He then made himself the target of the other nightmares, giving Aurum a clear path ahead to chase after Ibli. Ib's will to defy Li, and a tragic conclusion. Ibli picked up one of the swords in order to finish off Aurum, who had been injured by the power of the World Lance, but the dragon whelp Imduk leapt in front of her out of nowhere. Before its endangered friend, Imduk manifested a portion of its power as God's vassal. Even though it was brief, it forced the spirit of Li to show herself, paralyzing it. That let the spirit of Ib finally awaken from the dark depths of her own mind. Seeing the fallen Aurum and the sword in her hand, Ib realized what was going on and made a sudden decision, turning the tip of the sword towards her own body and impaling herself. The power of bonds and feelings, which is the strength of living things, can easily be turned into a weakness. As long as she was in the body of Ib, Aurum and the others who had deep bonds with her would not be able to turn their weapons on their friend. Faced by the haughty and arrogant Ibli, Aurum grew stronger. The mekk-knights stood their determination, Ningirsu fought bravely, and Imduk awakened a hidden power. Ultimately, the ambitions of Ibli were shattered by deadly irregularities caused by a series of small glitches stacking on top of one another. However, it was a nightmarish ending for Aurum and his companions, the warriors of the World Chalice. Page 7. The disaster that ended the golden age of the ancient civilization. The era in which life on Earth prospered and civilization became incredibly advanced. In days of long ago, far before Aurum and his friends were ever born, millions of years had passed since the time of the creation myth, and humanity had reached the heights of its prosperity, a power great enough to reveal the meaning of life itself. The dragons and their mission to protect the world's resources from being exploited were no longer considered to be a mere myth. It was during this era that the key was unearthed. At first, humanity was excited by the discovery of such a mythical relic, but they soon grew to fear the fact that they excavated the key, considering it a sign that the clash between the world hero and the Great Darkness actually happened, and decided to analyze the key. The scientist Li made a name for herself across the world as the leading authority of computer science. Her participation as part of the analysis team allowed them to make remarkable leaps forward in terms of analysis. But no one was aware of her true hypothesis, which fueled her powerful sinful ambitions. One can obtain the power of God. The secret hypothesis of Li was the unseen side of the heroic epic, the true identity of the Great Darkness. The key was actually able to call forth and control the powers of creation and destruction. The common element of the heroic epic of the world hero was that they were able to repel the Great Darkness, but the reverse must hold true as well. Thus, the Great Darkness must also have been created by the key. As its name implied, it must not only have been able to lock the world prison closed, but also to open it. In truth, the heroic epic was actually the history of the conflict of those who fought over the key, between those who took on the mission from God and those who desired to revive the power of destruction for themselves. The ultimate mekk-knight that brought about the end. The key analysis team renamed themselves to Crusadia, an organization that directly answered to the Confederation. Project mekk-knight, a machine soldier development project, was advocated as a measure to deal with the coming threat to the world. Several years later, the ultimate weapon, Mekk-Knight of the Morning Star, was created, using the key as its power core. However, something happened when they attempted to turn it on. The key caused the energy of the stars to immediately invert. It flowed into the Earth's core, and this overflowing energy then shattered the crust, causing the power of destruction to leak out, and the Earth's surface was scorched black. All of this was planned by Lee. However, just as the Great Darkness was about to return, 7 mekk-knights built by Crusadia as secondary support machines appeared and destroyed the mekk-knight of Morningstar. Then, they managed to seal the Great Darkness back into the Earth's crust. However, fragments of the divine power known as the Great Darkness remained on the surface in the forms of relics known as legacies, each representing portions of its power similar to the key. Even though the mastermind behind the disaster Lee was discovered to have died, her scheme had resulted in the damaged and ruined land around them being incapable of sustaining and supporting the human race. Crusadia came to the conclusion that the reason that the world hero who could control the power of the key didn't appear in this era was a result of the Earth growing weaker, and thus they decided to focus on restoring the Earth's health and fostering life to spread and diversify. To that end, they gave a command to the remaining mekk-knights, giving them orders to suppress human civilization, classifying it as their top priority. The personality data of the staff of Crusadia was linked via brainwaves to the mekk-knights, and with that, the mission to restore the Earth began. Thus, Crusadia entrusted their hopes to the future. But there was something they failed to notice. While the body of Lee had died, she had transferred her soul into the World Chalice, which now carried her will and ambitions.